The Book of Freedom by Miguel Flores. Introduction. Discipline is a practice of training an individual or a group to act or stay inactive in accordance with a certain code of behavior, a system. Simply said, discipline teaches you to behave in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that the system one is obeying is healthy. History shows that many disciplines have been flawed and created by people who had unhealthy intentions or were simply ignorant and didn't know any better. On the other hand, there are and have been many disciplines that have a lot of value to them, yet not all of them are universal, and not all of them fit every given person, especially in modern times. In this book, let's not focus on the flawed, misleading, and unhealthy disciplines, as those can be found all around us and through a quick Google search. Instead, let us focus on deconstructing the concept of a discipline and take a look at the disciplines that each and every one of us is following consciously or subconsciously. When that's done, we'll learn to build our own personalized discipline that will help us remain focused and healthy. Some of you might be wondering about the intentions behind this book or what motivated its creation. The answer is quite simple. The method of deconstructing and building a discipline that is described in this book has helped me tremendously, and I want to share it with people. Along my path, I've encountered many ups and downs, reformations of ego, and quite a few dramatic events that will be described in a different book. In the midst of those events, I realized that if things continue going the way they are, then the outcome won't be the brightest. And so, I resorted to studying various philosophies, disciplines, and teachings of the past. Upon deconstructing my own thoughts and actions, becoming more self-aware and balanced, I started to become more aware of my own thoughts, habits, cycles, and disciplines that I've been programmed to follow by my parents, teachers, etc., and realized that many of them are no longer helpful or outright destructive. As there was a need, there was an action. Step by step, I started to dig deeper into my personal little world and change things around. And after some time, I realized that a lot of progress has been made. As I've always been into handwriting and journaling, I dug through my field notes and found many useful notes and exercises, and I shared them with my friends, parents, and clients. I didn't force them onto people, I only shared them when people asked. Many found them interesting and useful, and I enjoyed being helpful. 1 plus 1 equals 2, and I decided to write a book. Enough about me though. Let's get back to the subject. What is discipline? As it was said in the introduction, discipline is a practice of training an individual or group to act or stay inactive in accordance with a certain code of behavior, a system. Without discipline, our behavior would be much more chaotic and unpredictable. Communication, social adaptation, and the passage of culture and family knowledge would be much more difficult and energy-consuming. Discipline itself is not good nor bad, just like an idea of a habit. It just is. Whether it's healthy or destructive is another question that should be approached individually on a personal level and then on a group level. Discipline allows us to further automate some of our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical processes, leaving us more time and energy for creativity and direct conscious action. For example, it's good to discipline yourself to drink water after waking up and eating healthy breakfast. It's good to exercise daily if your lifestyle doesn't allow you to move around enough naturally. Yet, any healthy discipline can become destructive if it's abused. For example, one can start going to gym daily, working out all day, eating too much protein, and so on. As a result, the person will exhaust their body and possibly cause damage. As it said, all is good in moderation. Discipline is a great way to pass down practical knowledge or concepts to those who are not yet ready to understand the underlying message behind those actions. Parents discipline their kids to help with the housework. School disciplines kids to memorize things for results and how to communicate within the society because not every child has a home where common sense is taught. Governments discipline people to obey because for too long people have been conditioned to live a certain lifestyle and they're no longer comfortable or able to think for themselves. All in all, discipline is required for society to function. The question is, if we want to follow a discipline where we're morphed into slaves who work for bread and entertainment, or we want to be disciplined to be responsible for our actions and have the full creative freedom that this world has to offer. Each one of us has to make that conscious decision on their own, and only then we'll be able to change ourselves. Only by changing ourselves and leading by example, we'll be able to bring about a collective change that will be truly impactful and visible. What is freedom? Freedom is a state of being when one is able to act according to their own free will, regardless of social norms, standards, and programs that have been forced onto them. Freedom is the ability to think critically and act according to one's morals and integrity. Freedom is the feeling of unconditional happiness and love. Freedom is the ability to think, feel, talk, and act completely immersed in the moment without any external influences. Of course, it sounds lovely and somewhat extreme, but as it was mentioned, according to one's morals and integrity, combined with the sober judgment of the moment, as one old proverb says, pray for peace, prepare for war. Modern discipline. The modern discipline is what we call the current state of Western culture, a capitalistic society we've been experiencing since the fall of Soviet Union. Common is not important. Family values are undermined, and an illusion of democracy and freedom is pushed down our throats, while our eyes and ears are bombarded with flickering pictures and spam-like advertisements of things we don't need at all or will have to replace as soon as possible. We all know the drill. Consume, consume, and consume some more. Being unique is no longer about skills, talents, and accomplishments, but replaced with artificial looks and edgy opinions. Health has lost a lot of its value and has been substituted with medicine. Spirituality has been turned into fantasy, and philosophy is now just a degree and an entertaining section in a bookstore. Laws of nature and natural hierarchy have been made non-important as we have been made to believe that our species are over everything on this planet, and education has been dumbed down to the point where it no longer produces thinking people but obedient shells instead. In this book, I don't want to discuss if things are good or bad. In my opinion, there is no good or bad. Things just are the way they are. It's our morals, culture, philosophy, and heart what define our understanding of good and bad. From the standpoint of those who run the capitalistic world and benefit from it, for them, the modern discipline is good. Yet, for most of us, it's abusive and unfair. Killing, skinning, and gutting a cow in broad daylight would be brutal, immoral, outright wrong for many of us, though many people who wouldn't dare to hurt a cow don't even think twice before buying a burger or a piece of beef in a store. Yet, outside of our social bubble, let's say somewhere in Siberia, it could be a defining moment in keeping your family alive. So, what can we really do? The opposing system is much stronger and bigger, and the majority of people are still too focused on the small things to look at the bigger picture. Well, on the bright side, the world is already changing, and the old ways are slowly collapsing under their own weight. Imbalance can't persist for long. From the practical point of view, we can start from ourselves. We can improve our own lives and lead by example. By bettering ourselves, we'll automatically have a more positive impact on our surrounding and the people around us. As a result, the working and helpful ways will start to spread on their own, and more it happens, more it will spread. Adapting and improving a personal discipline. The only place where you can make truly practical and harmonious changes is within yourself. From there, your influence will spread everywhere else, into your home, workplace, career, relationships, neighborhood, etc. Yet, for those changes to be truly helpful and practical, they have to make sense. They have to make sense to you foremost. For that, one needs a certain level of awareness and understanding of how things work and interact. A personal example. I've been a smoker for years. Of course, I've known that smoking is unhealthy, that it pollutes the oceans and my lungs, that cigarettes have many toxic ingredients and that may cause cancer, and so on. Knowing those things never motivated me to quit, not even the pictures of dying reefs and turtles and so on. Only when it became hard for me to breathe, only when I started to cough on a nightly basis and struggled to go through a work meeting without a cigarette, I started to think that it might be about time to quit. Honestly speaking, the first 3-year break from smoking came when I had an episode of coughing where I almost suffocated from a lack of oxygen. For the next 3 years, I didn't smoke. Then I picked up the unhealthy addiction again when I slipped from my path and detached from many of my healthy disciplines. As I'm writing this book, I'm once again working on getting back on my path, so in a funny way, you, the reader, and I are in this together. To adopt a new healthy discipline, or to be able to modify an existing one must first realize what's wrong with the current one and have a goal towards which one is striving. That will help with motivation and steering the course. Simply said, it's hard to find motivation to initiate changes when everything is fine. On the other hand, it's surprisingly easy to bring about dramatic improvements when something, mostly your own behavior, is threatening your survival, comfort, or success. Without a foundation, one has no power. Without a goal, one has no motivation or discipline. When we have a foundation, we know how things are supposed to be. We know what feels right. When we have a goal, we know where we want to be, what we need to do to get there, and what we need to change or let go of in order to be able to get there. A broken car is not a problem when it stands in the garage for years, yet it becomes a topic of discussion when a need to go far arises. So now, let's get into the practical part of this book that will help us fix the car that is our body and set a proper destination for the mind. Awareness. I'm pretty sure that if you're reading this book, then you've heard the term awareness somewhere in the past. Let's not dive too deep into the definition of this word, as to my experience, every person has their own understanding of what it is. Some use it only to describe the alertness or attention, some use it to describe something broader. Sadly, the language we are currently using doesn't possess the depth and words to describe such things. In this book, the term awareness describes something that is like a silent observer, a thing that is indifferent to all that it is observing. It sees the things you see, hears the things you hear, tastes and smells the same way as you. It experiences all your thoughts and emotions and observes the actions you engage in. That thing is you, yet it's something that is bigger than the different masks of ego that you wear throughout your life. But about that later. For lack of better words, awareness is something that contains all your experiences. At the same time, the idea that all experiences are contained by awareness doesn't mean that the awareness is actually engaged in our daily lives. For most of us, it just exists somewhere far away. Most are too enveloped in their daily ordeals, habits, and cycles that they don't even burden themselves with the question, "Why am I doing this?" that would help them retain a bit of their awareness. Once again, it's not good or bad. It just is. If they're not asking themselves any questions, then one could assume they're content with everything that's happening in their lives. For those who aren't 100% satisfied with all aspects of their existence, a healthy need for awareness and clarity arises. To attain those, the first step we need to make is to let go of wanting to get all at once and learn to notice and appreciate the progress we make by accomplishing one step after another. From countless attempts to get all at once, I've only learned that life doesn't work like that the hard way. But after learning to accept the journey for what it is, I started to enjoy the process of becoming more aware. Now it's more like an adventure game where I get to explore my inner and outer world, and each time I achieve something big or small, I learn that there's even more depth to everything, meaning there's more to discover, and each time I look at my life in retrospect, it's a pleasant realization that a lot of progress has been made and how everything once chaotic and stressful is now perfectly clear. Before we continue, I'll share a couple small practices you can try when and wherever you like. In case if you've never done anything like this, it will be a fun introduction into a new realm of your own experience, and if you have, then a refreshing reintroduction into something familiar. On the final pages of this book, I'll try to leave sources for some quotes, practices, and other things alike. Yet I won't be able to properly source all of those practices, as many of them have been passed to me in a verbal form from people with whom I no longer have any contact. Nevertheless, I'll try to add small comments to each practice about its origin and whatever else could be considered relevant. Disclaimer: some terms, ideas, and concepts may be unclear at first, but they will be explained along the escalation of this book, as the subjects described here are sequenced in a specific way that will also be revealed along the lines. Returning to previous pages and repeatedly reading things is welcome. Going over material during different periods of life reveals a different perspective on familiar subjects. Personally, I've gone through many books multiple times, and each time I've discovered something new or understood something on a whole new level. The Silent Observer. This practice was introduced to me not only in books but also by people around me. Its main focus is attaining and maintaining a deeper level of self-awareness. It's important to mention that this self-awareness is not meant to be negative, instead, it's meant to be indifferent. It's not about letting the mind tell you, oh, you're doing this, that's bad, you're bad, but simply seeing things for what they are. It's about being aware of actions, thoughts, processes, and inner dialogue, but mainly it's about the higher awareness itself. It's about becoming aware of what is witnessing it all, the awareness itself. First, give your complete focus to the present moment. Start by feeling your body. Notice what thoughts are going through the mind, what are you currently doing, and why you're doing it. When you're completely present in the moment, try to go deeper. What is it that is observing it all? What is hearing the thoughts? What is feeling the body? What is it that is silently observing all that your mind makes the body do? If you're a person with good imagination, you can imagine a silent version of yourself floating behind everything and observing the ongoing without judgment. Try to feel that thing, feel that awareness, and go as deep as you possibly can. One more guideline I can add is that don't start judging yourself. It's good if you understand whether what you're doing is in accordance with your dreams and desires or not, but there's no need to give the mind the power to start judging and causing negative sensations. As the silent observer within you, be indifferent. Use that indifference to look at yourself from a practical perspective and use that to make improvements. More time and focus you give to the practice, more you will understand the purpose of it and more aware you'll become. Don't rush it though. If it doesn't make sense or work out for you right away, that's okay. Take as much time as you need and you will get to it. Personal CCTV. One evening, a couple years ago, me and my dad were sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and discussing different experiences. During that conversation, he told me about a practice that he often uses to reflect on his actions and general progress. As he said, it helps you see how practical you are, how much time you waste, and if you've been a dick to people on a subconscious level. This practice is basically looking at yourself from a side through a black and white filter and no sound. You can go back to a specific situation, or you can go through the day as a whole. Mainly, just look at yourself from a side, again, without judgment or thoughts, and just see. Have you done everything you wanted to? How much time did you waste? Have you been acting in the truest way possible? Or have you been conducting yourself in a way that feels unnatural? Have you treated people unfairly and have you overreacted somewhere? This practice will help you get a better overview of your progress and daily activities. Of course, just looking at yourself from a side is of no use unless you use that experience as motive and material for improvement. Engaging in personal movies is a waste of time if you don't learn anything. Being present. I can't recall where I heard about this practice for the first time, but I'm pretty sure it's been described in different forms in many books. The title of it is also rather self-explanatory. Being present is being present. Become aware of the observer, thoughts, emotions, actions, and your surrounding. It doesn't mean you should stop whatever you're doing. If you're doing something that you've been doing habitually and your awareness and presence tell you it's not right for you, then you should stop. If you don't feel like what you're presently engaged in is not right for you, continue doing it, but be completely present. Feel every cell of yours, every thought that arises in the process without giving too much attention to those thoughts. Notice them and let them pass. You can even silence the mind if that works for you. As previously mentioned, the goal of this practice is to be present, not in the past where your memories and experiences are, not in the future where your hopes, dreams, expectations, and assumptions are. Be 100% present and use your awareness to do the best now and use that to build your desired future consciously. After all, future is built by our past and present actions plus a few variables provided by the universe. The past can't be changed, yet present moment is completely under your control. By being present in the moment, you have the power to change things around and move in the desired destination. Sharing those practices doesn't in any way mean I'm claiming they're the only, the best, or anything of that kind. I'm only sharing them because they work well for me. Many practices that work well for others doesn't resonate with me, and many things that work well for me are not working for somebody else. I'm just sharing them so that if they resonate with you or seem to add any value to you, you're free to use them. If they don't, then just dismiss them. It's all voluntary, and a sober, independent judgment is always encouraged. If we're already on this topic, I'd also like to mention that I'm not claiming to be a teacher, guru, prophet, master, or anything of that sort. My only intention is to live a fun, happy life, offer some value to people around me, and leave my kids and further generations a better planet to live on. Now, let's take this information and carry it over to the next chapter. Eventually, all those points and practices will get sorted and organized and it will start to make more sense. For those like me who are after organized and neatly packed practical data, that will be provided on the late chapters as a systematic course. For those who enjoy a lighter monologue between the works, those readers can carry on reading without a rush. The mind and ego. Though still on the invisible spectra of our subjects, the ones we're looking at in this chapter are more popular in the mainstream. Despite that, they're still equally important. As it will be repeated later, all can be without one, so one can be without the others. What does the mind mean in this book? The mind is what we call me, myself, and I. The mind is the voice in our head, our thoughts, materialistic desires, dreams, habits, beliefs, culture, religion, etc. It's what does the analytics and strategic planning in us. The mind is also a tool that navigates in past experiences, present moment, and past experience-based expectations or speculations of future. The mind can be programmed, and the mind also requires a lot of energy, so it likes to run on autopilot. The mind is what interprets the signals we receive as our reality and whether these signals are rewarding or punishing. We either employ the mind or the mind employs us, and somebody else employs the mind along the ladder. So one could say that being in charge of the mind is a pretty big deal. The ego. The ego is a mask that the mind uses at any point of its existence. Though described in singular at first, each person wears many masks throughout their life. Some have more things in common, some change, and some switch like jobs, titles, and personal clothing choices. As adults, we don't wear the same clothes we used to wear as kids. The ego is an organized or unorganized social construct that varies in its complexity depending on the complexity of the society it exists in. It lives off of and thrives on social recognition and approval. The ego always lacks something, needs more, is never satisfied, and occasionally feels threatened. If we want to make the mind work for us, we first need to understand the state it's in right now. What masks is it actively using? What are the motives, beliefs, illusions, obsessions, and so on? Basically, we need to become aware of the mind and ego, and through awareness, we can start actively changing it. If we're unaware of what's going on in our mind and are unable to alter the processes it's engaging in, what power over mind are we talking about? There will be a simple diagram presented later that will make it easier to actively keep an eye on the mind. Let's start from the most obvious and easily noticeable things, repeating thoughts. What are the thoughts that go through your mind the most? Are they coming from the past? Or are they future speculations? Or are they connected to what's going on in the moment? Do these thoughts make you feel good or not? If they're on your mind so much, isn't it time to go through them once and for all and let them go? Now, think about the things you desire as your mind. What are the first things that come to you? How do these things make you feel? Does your mind want them because they contribute to your growth, improvement, or your personal success? Could it be that those desires have been put into you by the society around you, or are they truly the things that your soul desires? I think it's also worth mentioning that hunger, desire for shelter, and a desire for a companion aren't something we take into consideration here, as those desires are coming from our animal nature. After all, we're animals too. Here's the point when the mind and ego can seem like one and the same. Which ones of your desires truly resonate with your calling and purpose of existence, and which ones are in place to feed your ego, making it feel more important, hungry, and in charge? Beliefs and hopes are also something we're going to look at. Now that you're starting to understand how awareness and deconstructing work, you can start picking apart your beliefs and hopes. What are all the important beliefs that you're holding on to and that are shaping your existence? Do you believe that you have all the power in this world if you set yourself to achieve something, or do you believe you're nothing more than a piece of meat? Do you believe that everything happens for a reason or something else? What beliefs are coming from your family and upbringing? What's coming from the culture around you? And what has been attached to you by the toxic part of society we're experiencing? Sort them out and read them over. Which ones are positively contributing to your progress, and which ones are burdening and exhausting you? The positive ones can be kept for as long as they bring value. All else can be reconfigured or let go of. I'll describe the process of letting go a bit later in the book. I think now is the best time to get to the fun and uncomfortable part. Let's look at all the insecurities that the mind could be holding. Remember all the things you feel insecure about. Personally, I recommend writing them down so you can further deconstruct them and look at them from a different perspective. When all of the insecurities have been written down, start picking them apart. Why are those things present in your life? Where are they coming from? Is it in your power to change them, or all you can do is find a way to exist with them in peace without letting them reduce the quality of your life? Are they coming from the flawed view of the ego or mind, or was the mind conditioned to believe those things? If the mind was conditioned to believe those things, then who convinced the mind of its insecurities and flaws? If it's in your power to bring about a positive change, then what is holding you back? Is it the uncomfortable being that is comfortable enough not to work, or is it the mind being lazy? If there's something you can't change, like a missing arm, then what can you do to make peace with it and move along your path without letting it hold you back? It's also encouraged to ask more questions that make sense to you or fit the context of whatever you're picking apart. When all the relevant questions have been answered, look at what you have in front of you. Is it enough to make a solid plan of improvement and start executing it, or is there still something unclear? If you have found all the answers for that given situation, start planning and executing it. If not, don't be discouraged and continue working on your awareness and understanding of yourself. Here are a few mental exercises that could potentially balance the activity in the mind and put the ego back in place. Silencing the mind. We're all acquainted with the voice that's constantly commenting on things in our head. It describes the mental images we imagine. It speaks as if it was us, and most of the time that voice has a negative and judgmental undertone. Though that inner voice is a part of us, for some reason it's not always on our side, and when it is, it's very egocentric and toxic. As it was already said, mental work is extremely energy consuming and exhausting. So, one of the things we can do to reduce the waste of our internal energy is to undertake a difficult yet important task of getting the inner voice under control. For us, it's about achieving stillness and peace of mind. For the inner voice, it's about survival. The voice is sneaky and it will do everything to remain in its position of power. A strong yet toxic inner voice often makes one believe that they are the voice and that the voice is them, yet that's not entirely true. The voice is nothing more than a tool for analytics and logical thinking that has gotten way out of control and started pushing its own agenda that rarely truly benefits the body and the soul. Nevertheless, it is possible to make friends with it. Notice how I'm not talking about battling or destroying it. There's no need for an internal conflict, and there is definitely no need in destruction of something that's a natural part of us. Our goal is to attain a deeper sense of balance and internal understanding. So let's get to the practice. The point of it is first become aware of the inner voice, of the things it's saying, the tone of it, and how those things make you feel. Are they uplifting or degrading? What emotions does the chatter bring up? Is it giving you practical comments on things that are going on in the present moment, or is it recycling things from the past or making up scenarios of future? When you start becoming more aware of it, you'll start to notice how much mental space it takes up and how it drags you further away from the present moment. When you've reached a level of awareness to start consciously silencing it, simply disregard its comments and focus on the present moment. Focus on your activity, internal or external processes, and so on. Notice, there is no need to talk to it, as that is the same inner voice tricking you. If you start mentally saying things like shut up and such, that's the same inner voice talking to itself, once again pulling you further from the moment. The inner voice has a tendency to come back and it does so whenever it can. So this practice is not something you do once, but something you actively apply on a daily basis until it becomes a part of your routine. Eventually, when you will have power over the inner voice and not vice versa, you'll be able to make friends with it and summon it whenever you need it. Then it will gladly analyze things and find practical solutions to your situations. Mental diet. From an early age, we've been told to be conscious of things we eat as the food we consume directly affects our physical state of being and health. Our diet has a direct impact on our body, and thus it has a direct impact on our emotional and mental states of being as well. For example, when you eat well, you feel good physically. That affects your mood in a positive way too. Yet, when you eat something spoiled and get sick, that also makes you feel bad emotionally and mentally. Yet, we rarely speak about how the constant stream of thoughts in our head affects our emotional and physical being. So, this practice is here to help us reevaluate our mental diet and bring the necessary changes. This practice too requires awareness and constant engagement, as only then one will be able to truly manage the stream of thoughts in a practical way. Start off by becoming aware and present in the moment. Look at your thoughts and evaluate them without focusing on them too much. See what thoughts are popping up the most. Why are they coming up? How do they make you feel? Are they relevant to the current situation or are they distracting you? If they are relevant, are they practical? If they are, then why are they still repeatedly coming up? Haven't you applied those thoughts to your reality yet? If they aren't relevant, then why are you wasting your energy on them? If those repeating thoughts are toxic, what can you do to eliminate them? Maybe there's something that's out of balance in your life, or maybe you have some internal conflict connected to those thoughts. Then, as you go through your day, keep this practice in mind and observe your thoughts whenever you can. Over time, you will start to notice repeating patterns and a general mood of your thoughts. When you've collected enough data on yourself, you'll be able to apply the newfound awareness to change those patterns by changing your habits, activities, and solving the conflicts that spawn those thoughts. It's also good to look at your thoughts from a perspective of spotting an imposter. Are those thoughts really yours? Or has someone or something made you think they're yours? Maybe you were programmed to think those things by your parents, teachers, or the people who are in your circle. That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad and the people around you are toxic. It only means that you need to be more aware of what you allow to have power in your life and manage those things with awareness. If the thoughts benefit you on your path, allow them to stay for as long as they are needed. If not, dissolve them. Managing desires. There are multiple levels of desires. There are physical or animal desires or instincts that we have thanks to our animal nature. After all, we're just another species of animals that live on this planet. Those primal desires are to be fed, to have a safe place where to sleep, to find a partner and continue the bloodline. Basically, our physical desires are our survival instincts, which are the very basic reasons we've come this far as species. As we're social animals, we also have social desires to be accepted, understood, appreciated, and so on. Those are natural too, yet often confused with minds or ego's desires that basically want the same things but for all the selfish reasons. Lastly, we have our personal, unique soul desires, the reason why we are here and what makes us all so special. Those desires are to feel fulfillment, to achieve something grand, and to live a happy life doing what one loves. When all of those desires are fed the harmonious way and are in balance, existence is fun and pleasant and one can handle things with ease. When any of those desires are not met or ignored, depression sets in. And though all of those desires need to be in balance, there's a certain ladder they follow. For example, it's difficult to pursue social or spiritual desires when your basic survival needs are not met. So, to follow the path practically, one must first establish a solid foundation, aka to have food on the table, a bed to sleep on, and the potential to be a worthy partner. When all the basic needs are met, it becomes possible and interesting to pursue the social and spiritual desires, which complement each other and contribute to feeding the physical desires. This practice is about becoming aware of your desires and being able to tell which ones are true to you and which ones aren't, as well as how well you're filling them. Do you eat enough of good and healthy food? Do you get enough rest? Do you feel safe? Are you satisfied with your current place in life? Do you feel appreciated? What do you want to feel appreciated for? Are you contributing to your family or to the society around you in a positive way? What are your true dreams and goals? Are they really yours, or have you been programmed to believe that they are yours? For example, if you want to become famous, then what's the motive behind it? Do you have something valuable to share with the masses? Do they need it and will it make their lives better? Or is it your ego that wants recognition, attention, and so on? or is it the lack of attention from childhood that you're still experiencing? When you have a better understanding of your own desires and their level of importance, you'll have a better idea of what to do with your time and energy. You will know what activities are worth engaging in and what not, as you'll have more clarity on what desires are truly yours and which ones have been false. Thus, being able to quit all that is not lifting you up and direct your energy where you can feel truly fulfilled and happy. Emotions. Emotions is something we're all familiar with. They're natural, we all feel them. Some of them are natural responses that have helped our species to survive and develop, yet some are conditioned, toxic, and often take over and exhaust our lives without us even being completely aware of it. So, in this chapter, we will look at our emotions, sort them out, and reprogram them so that they work in our favor, give us the needed information, and fade away without tiring or burdening us. As it was mentioned above, emotions are natural and they have their purpose to make us understand if any experience was uplifting or teaching, if what we're doing, hearing, or saying is right or toxic, and so on. In itself, an emotion is not good nor bad, it just is. Yet, when a thought that passed the mind turns into a tornado and suddenly makes you feel anxious and stressed, it's no longer good for you. When you're constantly overwhelmed with emotions, you barely have the capacity to be aware. Not to mention that the inner turmoil exhausts not only the mind, but the body too. After all the thoughts and emotions directly affect the body. The body reacts to everything the mind and emotions say and do to it. Increased heart rate, sweaty palms, goosebumps, heavy breathing, twitching, and problems with digestion. Mostly, we take emotions as they are, without questioning them, and that's where they take over. This chapter was designed to help us become more aware of our emotions, help us understand and rework them into something more balanced and wholesome. When we'll become aware of our emotional aspects, we'll be able to see our body through a much wider and clearer perspective, thus being able to work with it better. When we've reached a certain level of awareness over our mind, ego, emotions, body, and general existence so far, we'll be able to look deeper into ourselves and bring to fruition the improvements and changes we're after. Emotions should be observed, evaluated, and deconstructed in retrospect as well as in present moment. If you're not yet able to catch them in the moment, start from remembering the emotions you felt during the previous day or the current day so far. What thoughts have brought up emotions? Were those emotions positive or negative? If they were negative, then what was the source of that negativity? Do you need to resolve whatever that thought was about? Maybe you can do something to no longer think about that thing. What situations brought up negative emotions? Why? Were those emotional guiding responses or were they artificial? Maybe those negative emotions were telling you that whatever you're engaging in is no longer right for you and you should let go of it. Don't forget to look at the positive emotions too. What made you feel good, loved, appreciated, and happy? During what activities did you feel the lightest? What are those emotions and experiences telling you? Are you on the right path? Are you doing what you truly enjoy? Or you're enjoying the activity because you've been conditioned to enjoy it? Maybe you felt happy when you were getting drunk in a bar. Maybe it made you feel happy because you were made to believe that it's something that makes you happy, even though you'd rather be doing something better and less destructive. Up to you to figure. When you're done deconstructing your emotions, you've already done a great job. By now, we've covered general awareness, the mind, ego, and emotions. If you've been writing those things down and documenting them on paper or in a document, then you've already collected some notes that soon will become guidelines for your personal diagram and plan. So, congratulations, you've done a great job. Sorting habitual emotions. As a foreword for this practice, let's look at death and how it's seen in different cultures. For example, in our modern Western culture, it's seen as something dark and sad. Of course, it is when death happens unnaturally or by violence. Yet, there are cultures where death is celebrated and when a relative dies, a feast and a celebration is held. In a way, we can use this simple example as an introduction to understanding habitual emotions, as many emotional responses we generate are often conditioned by cultural norms and our place of origin. Occasionally, and especially in our Western culture, those conditions are more toxic than anything. Let's take disappointment for example. Why do we feel disappointed when something takes more time than we thought? Why do we feel discouraged and disappointed by lessons we're presented with when those same lessons give us the perspective and opportunity to grow and achieve what is desired more practically? In this practice, we will once again use our awareness to spot and deconstruct the emotional responses that happen within us during different events and figure out if they are right for us or if they need to be reprogrammed. This practice contains less theory and more fieldwork, as the theoretical part of it is less applicable than the practical side. Why? Because deconstructing your emotions in retrospect during a meditation, for example, has less impact than picking it apart as it emerges. Of course, it's harder to become aware when you're in the midst of an emotional response. Yet, we should always keep in mind that it's not about the speed of our progress, but the progress itself. There is no need to rush and try to solve everything instantly. After all, we're not feeling all emotions all at once. They emerge when there's a signal. Therefore, the important part is to know of this practice and to have the awareness and intention to apply it when the moment comes. For example, when you're doing something that you consider relatively important and it's not working out the way you expected, return to your state of indifference and awareness and observe what emotions start to arise. Evaluate them, feel for yourself if the response is healthy and harmonious or is it toxic. Even better, see if the emotional response is necessary at all. Maybe you were taught to feel this way when something happens, yet in reality, you'd be better off without that feeling. Could it be possible that indifferent yet responsible approach and extraction of lessons could be enough? Maybe you don't need to waste your time and energy on feelings like guilt, disappointment, and anger. If you engage in this practice, you'll start to notice a wide range of emotions that emerge and subside throughout the day. Based on those observations, you'll obtain a deeper understanding of yourself and an organic mechanism that will be able to do something about it. Then, while in the field, you'll be able to manage those responses much better, and in later meditations, you'll have the peace and time to go over the highlights and figure out their origins and what to do about them. As mentioned in the first chapter of this book, I'm not trying to be a teacher or force a philosophy. I'm offering a toolkit that you can use or not use depending on your personal situation and needs. After all, it's about having the awareness and the ability to bring about improvements and not blindly believe everything you are being told. Reprogramming emotions. By now, we already know that some of our emotional responses are natural and some are conditioned. In this practice, we will go deeper into the process of reprogramming our emotions. The purpose of it is to eliminate the emotional responses that are wasteful and toxic and keep the ones that help us exist in this world. When you become aware of your toxic emotional responses, it can be helpful to make a note of it. Write down what you felt and what was the cause of that emotion. Then look at it from the perspective of indifferent awareness and try to figure out why the situation made you feel the way it did. Was it because of something you truly believe, or was it because of something someone else made you believe? Could the reason behind that feeling be ignorance or a lack of understanding of the processes and cycles around you? Maybe you were engaging in an activity that simply wasn't right for your purpose. What can you personally do about it? Was it something you had to do because it was an important step on your path and you just had to power through it, in which case it's better to just make peace with it and move on? Or can you learn from your response and figure out a different activity to engage in? Was there a possibility to respond differently, maybe in a more harmonious or relaxed way? Maybe that response taught you something valuable. The body. The body is the vehicle in which we travel through this lifetime and a tool through which we interact with the world around us. As all can be without one, so one can be without the others. The body is equally important as all other things described in previous chapters. It's important to be in your body and to be comfortable in it. One needs to hear the body and treat it well so that the body can do its job well. The ladder you build is the ladder you climb. If you are aware of your body and your communication with it is clear, you have direct understanding of what's going on inside and around the body and what are the causes and responses you receive. You also start to notice what processes happen in the body during various thoughts, tasks, emotions, which will eventually open up opportunities for improvement. As necessity arises, so does the motivation and opportunities to achieve what is desired. Making small steps of improvement in all and any of your bodies, or even coming to certain realizations, is already progress and movement from the point where you started. As that happens, you'll start to notice how things are connected between each other, how making improvements in one area automatically positively affects other areas, and how more and more things start to make sense to you. The mind becomes more calm and clear. Wasteful emotions don't arise as often. The voice of the mind is quiet and intuition works better. The body feels healthier and life feels much more refreshing. So let's take a look at some body awareness practices I've adopted throughout time. Here they will be described as separate exercises, though ideally they should be applied all at once and practiced constantly. Surface awareness. Becoming aware of the surface of your body is one of the easiest practices to engage. It's rather self-explanatory as well. The point of it is to become aware of the surface of your body as a whole. Become aware of your posture, of each finger, hand, arm, leg, foot, and toe. Become aware of the sensations that go through them. Notice how your muscles get tense during different situations and practice relaxing them on demand. Being tense is something most of us get used to, though that doesn't mean it should be this way. I think most will agree with me if I say that being relaxed is much more pleasant than being tense. Internal awareness. Now let's practice becoming aware of our internal processes. Notice the beating of your heart. Is it light and slow, or is it fast and intense? What's going on in your stomach? What's happening with your breathing? Are you able to breathe comfortably, or you're feeling like something is stuck in your throat? How is the food you're eating affecting your body? Does it respond positively, or is it signaling you that something's not right? Emotional awareness. This practice takes the emotional awareness from the previous chapter and combines it with the physical awareness. As you become more aware of your emotions and their origin, try to become aware how those emotions are affecting your physical body. What emotions make you feel tense? Do your daily emotions speed up your heart or make you feel anxious? Maybe some emotions affect your digestion in a negative way, or maybe they make you eat more than you should. Our emotions and thoughts are deeply interconnected with our body. As our physical state affects our mental and emotional states, so do our emotions and thoughts affect our body. When one is out of balance, all others are too. As above, so below. As within, so without. Mental awareness. Mental to physical awareness is similar to emotional to physical awareness. The thoughts in our mind affect emotions and the body. As you are present and aware in the moment, become aware of the thoughts and notice how those are affecting your body. Did a thought make you feel uncomfortable or sad? Is a seemingly invisible or subtle thought making you feel visibly tense? By practicing mental to physical awareness, you'll learn to notice thoughts that bring you out of balance. When you're able to spot them, you'll be able to counteract them by either dismissing them or reevaluating them. Through awareness and practical work, returning to your natural state of peace and balance will become possible. Active awareness. Active awareness practice combines the knowledge we obtained from the previous exercises and allows us to apply them all at once whenever we need. First, we become grounded and present in the moment. Then, we start to observe our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations through indifferent awareness, and then consciously apply changes and improvements that are relevant in the present moment to the given situation. By being actively aware, one becomes able to actively manipulate their reality and achieve practical results as within, so without. I'm going to assume that you read this book carefully, that all the previous chapters are starting to make sense and become helpful in those practices. Yes, amazing. No, start over. Anyway, by now you're possibly starting to understand that things are connected between each other and together they create a system. As with everything, there are levels to this shit. So now we're moving upwards along the spiral to add more depth to the purpose of the material you're reading. the spirit. Now that you're acquainted with your mind, thoughts, emotions, and body, and have some form of awareness over yourself, it's time to look into the spiritual, into the force that stands behind everything and the purpose of this very existence. The more esoteric chapter that is probably more of my personal interpretation of meaning of life and the reason why all is the way it is rather than anything concrete. As with everything, if it resonates with you, use it, and if it doesn't, don't. After all, my perspective of the world in and around me, as well as my understanding of it, is constantly changing and growing. It would be ridiculous to blindly believe something without questioning or testing it. We're not creating a religion here, we're just trying to live better lives. So, what is the meaning of life then? I'd say simply experiencing it. Of course, we owe a couple things to our ancestors and the planet itself, but otherwise, to just have an experience. Each one can and probably does understand the statement differently, and that's the way it should be. Life is what you want it to be, and you have the complete freedom to go live it the way you want to a reasonable extent and according to your ambitions and realistic situation. Or stay inactive and just dream of a better life. And what are the exact things we owe to our ancestors and the planet? To our ancestors, we owe to continue the bloodline and give our children and grandchildren a worthy foundation thanks to which they can develop and thrive. Countless generations lived, worked, and survived to make your existence and experience possible, regardless of their successes and failures. You owe them and the planet your very life and existence, and it's up to you to do a better job than they did while remaining grateful to them for being able to do that. Not doing that would be rather selfish and disrespectful to your whole bloodline. To the planet, we owe our air, food, shelter, heat, water, everything. If there is a God, the planet is our God. After all, the God, gods, or whatever forces one chooses to believe in have all qualities that can be found in nature. The planet has given us materials for everything we have. We can't exist without our nature, yet it can exist without us. If at this very moment our entire civilization was cut and pasted into any other setting outside of our planet, we would instantly die. Yes, we probably can colonize other planets eventually, but even then, we will need time to adapt and figure out what is what. Regardless, we still need to make it that far, and the way we're currently treating our planet and each other, our chances to make it that far are rather slim. Practically speaking, though, we owe our planet to take good care of it and each other, as we're the only species here that have a mind, logical, and strategic thinking. We owe it not only care and maintenance of balance, but improvement, as we want to leave further generations not only a good social foundation, but also a healthy planet to live on. And how do we live for sake of living and give our ancestors and planet what we owe them? That's where the freedom of choice comes in. It's completely up to us how we want to live our lives and how we give what we owe. Aside from a couple predetermined variables, you can have full control over your attitude, approach, creativity, and action. If you are aware of you being the thing we call here the spirit and of its presence in everything, you start to think and approach situations differently. When you understand yourself, your origin, your purpose, and how you want to achieve it, you can start practically making steps towards it while understanding all the things you need to understand in your surrounding. Whether you want to call it the soul, spirit, or knowing, if you're in touch with it, then it can guide you through your life, thus making the experience much less painful and uncomfortable. In my current experience, there is no clear and definitive way to figure out your personal purpose or its direction or how to know your origin 100% correctly. Nevertheless, there are ways to get as close as possible, and then through your personal effort, you'll make the next leap. Now I will share some of the practices that have helped me obtain some level of clarity. Observing memorable events. Recalling and observing memorable events is an exercise that should be done mentally and on paper so that you don't get distracted and have something to go over again later. Through this practice, you'll be able to see your life from a more clear perspective and get a deeper understanding of your path. It will shed a different light at your past and will help you learn from it more practically. Later on, that will give you a better point of reference and the ability to pursue your path with more bravery and practicality. Take out a notebook, a piece of paper or a document and recollect all most memorable events that have happened to you. The list should involve all the positive as well as the negative events, as they are different sides of the same coin and you can learn from both of them. When you've written them down, start analyzing them. Feel them and think about them. What are they trying to teach you? Maybe the negative ones can teach you about the things that aren't right for you or things that should be reevaluated. What are the positive events hinting at? Maybe they're guiding you towards your true purpose and ways you can achieve it. When you've done all the writing and analyzing, think about the ways you could apply that newfound knowledge in your daily life and make more practical and balanced moves throughout your existence. List of fulfilling activities. This practice should also be done mentally on paper and then applied to your daily life for it to be most efficient. Relive your life internally and remember all the activities you've engaged in that made you feel truly inspired and fulfilled. The activities during which you were completely present and forgot about the existence of time. Write them all down, analyze them, meditate on them, and think about the reasons why they made you feel the way they did and how you could engage in them more often. Maybe those activities are hinting at your true and applicable talents and purpose of your existence. Maybe you can find ways to do those things more often or how to turn them into your career. After all, what's the point of living if you're not doing something that makes your life worthwhile? List of talents. Take a piece of paper, a notebook, or a digital document and make a list of talents and gifts that you yourself enjoy engaging in. Write them down in order that feels most natural for you and look at them. Mark the ones that bring you the most joy and think or write down how and why you'd like to use these talents more. How could they improve your life and contribute to the world around you? Can you turn those talents into a profession that would bring you joy, fulfillment, as well as financial income? After all, we're living in a world where things and energies need to be exchanged. If you realize that you barely engage in talents in your daily life, then take a moment to think about the reasons behind it. Have you been too caught up in your job, or maybe you've let the inner child in you get quiet? If you catch yourself thinking that you don't have any talents, don't let that thought get to you. Every person in this world has their natural talents. Maybe you just haven't discovered or noticed them. Well, in that case, it's never too late to start exploring yourself. If you're having difficulties with figuring out your talents, get back to the previous two exercises of observing memorable events and list of fulfilling activities, and there you will definitely find moments that will hint at your talents. What do you want to leave behind? This practice will help you set your priorities straight and see if you've been acting according to your integrity and purpose. Once again, pull out a piece of paper or something to write on or into and start making a list of things you want to leave behind after your experience in this body comes to an end. While you're making this list, keep in mind that you want to do it from the bottom of your heart and not the perspective of ego. It's not about becoming famous or wanting to leave behind a garage full of cars. It's more about leaving behind something bigger and more wholesome than material things. A message, a way of living, or knowledge others can apply to their lives and have a more balanced experience, and so on. Here are a few hints. Do you want to leave a stable and strong foundation for your kids and grandkids? Do you want to leave a better and cleaner planet for all the future generations? Do you want to leave behind some sort of contribution to the society you grew up in? All of us have a purpose because of which we've been born. Some things have common traits and some are more personal. When you've done your list, look at it and be honest with yourself. Do your daily actions correspond with what's your purpose and what you want to leave behind? If yes, great, carry on doing what you're doing. If not, then maybe you should change something around and find ways to be more in alignment with your purpose. Now that we're done with the main and simply applicable chapters, as promised, before we move on, I will share the diagram that unites all we've looked at previously. The point of this diagram is to have a visual representation of the internal processes and unsolved situations so that we can find all the answers to entangled questions, start finding solutions, and maintain the answers for reference. Diagram of balance. Spiritual state affects both the emotional and mental states. Mental and emotional states equally influence each other, and both affect the physical state. By improving any state, you instantly start to bring in small improvements in other states. By healing your body, you will also heal your mental and emotional states, but to an extent. By healing your mental state, you will start to see minor improvements in your emotional and physical beings too, and vice versa. By keeping your spiritual state of being in good condition or by improving it, you will also bring substantial improvements into all the other states.